Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today is kind of an expensive one. For those who may not know, I'm making this sound like a really bad thing that happened. So, for those of you who do not know, not that I am good at it by any means, but I do race some more local races on my dirt bike. But at this previous one I did, it was supposed to be a Loretta Lynn's area qualifier. I didn't expect to qualify, but I signed up for the qualify just in case I did happen to actually make it through and qualify for Loretta Lynn's and all that. And it was at Wildcat Creek MX. And I did my practice laps and all that. Immediately felt outclassed, even in the C class, which is, I think, the lowest I could go with that race. I felt outclassed and everything. And so I was like, dang, this is going to be a tough race for me. But by the end of that last practice lap, I was feeling better. Like maybe I could actually hit some of the jumps and all that. And, not on the side of the track, But I don't know what YouTube would do if I said other words. So we're going to leave it at that. So, but yeah, no, anyways, I was feeling pretty good after that last practice lap, thinking maybe I can do something here and not come dead last like I did 2 years ago, because I didn't race in between. It was my senior season of football and all that, so I gave football my everything. But I wanted to try and not come dead last again. And my dad and I had spent, the week before that race leading up to it, finishing the bike up. It was running great and all that. I had just replaced the piston ring like a month before that. It was running smooth. It was running great. I was doing practice laps out here every day for the past like 2 or 3 months, as long as I could. Well, probably a month and a half actually. I always get it wrong, like my dates. But I'd been practicing as much as I could. Even when there was still snow on the ground, I was coming out here riding the bike as much as I could, trying to get as much practice time as I could, trying to be as physically prepared for the race as possible. And so that week before, I did some extra stuff. I rechanged the piston ring. I'll get to that in a second. That ended up way worse than I wanted it to. Changed the tires. I changed a couple other things, the air filter, grips, because my other grips were trash and kept sliding off. They were some Chinese Pro Taper ones. Dad got them for me for like Christmas or something, and they weren't what he thought they were when he bought them. And so I changed them out to some Diamond Scott grips. I love these Scott grips. They're nice and soft. The only problem I have with them is if you get any kind of chemical on them, they just break down immediately. But otherwise, they feel great. I mean, they're soft, they're squishy. They do take a lot of shock out of the bars and all that. They honestly feel great in my opinion. Obviously, that's not going to work for everyone. Everyone's got their own stuff. I'm not trying to necessarily push my opinion on them. I also haven't tried out other grips, so I don't know if there's anything better. But I changed out those. I redid my front forks. I did my rear shock down here. I did all of this myself, actually, except for the tires. And then that's where the good part stops. It gets down to here. Well, I think it'd just be easier just to jump straight into it and show you guys. So I guess let's get into it. So as you guys can obviously see, the engine is, well, not in one piece anymore. And there's a couple reasons for that. Well, let's start before race day. So we went to change the piston ring, thinking nice easy job, gets us a little more compression. Because maybe the other one after several hours of riding has, a flat spot on the ring or something and is letting a little bit of compression by. Just change that, make sure it's as good as possible for the race. I went to do that, and I went to reinstall the jug. And well, as you guys can probably see, these things are kind of rusty. And well, I had one snap clean off. I mean, down inside the case and gone. So that wasn't exactly fun. And so that was like 2 days before race day. And so we took the engine, split it apart. My dad and we split it apart, and I had to go to work, so he tried to do as much as he could. Ended up getting stuck on a spot because my shift shaft is actually bent a little bit. And by a little bit, I do mean ever so slightly. That's how I got it back in here. Oh, and my shifter's not exactly what I would call tight. I forgot to retighten that down. It doesn't matter. But yeah, the shift shaft was a little bent, so I had to kind of force it through the cases a little bit. It didn't hurt anything. It probably didn't help anything, but it didn't hurt anything. So we got that, and we started putting things back together, and then he noticed some metal bits down in the bottom of the cases, and we thought it was from, just a piece that, didn't really need, that, and it sounds bad to say, that didn't really need the metal. It was from the top of my shift drum, and it looked like it didn't need it, so that's what we thought. And then we started to put it back together and realized the clutch didn't work when we finally put it like all back together. And then we realized that was actually a clutch plate that had shattered and went through the engine. I have some shattered bits I might put in here later, just to show you. I have some shattered bits from the clutch plate, and all that. But we got that figured out, and I had a couple extra clutch plates laying around from previous clutch packs and all that. We put it in there. The clutch didn't exactly feel the same as before. It was actually very much like you're letting the clutch out, and all of a sudden it just like engages. That was it. It was just kind of like a bam, it grabs and wants to go. There was no gradual slip effect or anything. It was just a grab and go. And I thought it was weird, but I was like, whatever, I'm gonna leave it. And turned out so far that hasn't been any kind of issue, just kind of makes the bike hard to ride. But then we got the engine running, sort of. And I had another problem where there was water that was coming out of the engine between the cases. And I know for a fact that I had tightened all of my case bolts down that night when I put it together with him. But I came out the next day and there was water pouring out of the cases when I filled the coolant up. And it was because all of these bolts, all of the case bolts were somehow loose. I have no idea how, but they all were. Every single one that I know I had tightened all the way down. I wasn't too upset by that because, that was something where I just tightened them back down and the water stopped leaking. Like, dead serious. It all just stopped leaking right then and there. Then we put the bike back together. I did some practice laps. We got it loaded up, ready to go. Race day, here we come, We got to the track. I ran my practice laps. The bike was feeling pretty dang good, all things considered, other than the clutch. All about the clutch. The clutch was not great. It wasn't working, and it was working fine enough. So I was like, cool, I'll run that. And then we got back to the pits, waited for my heat, and when I got ready for my heat, I decided, you know what? Because the only chance I have of not placing dead last is getting a good start out the gate. I did some practice launches just before the race, just to make sure I was in tune with the bike as best as possible. And the clutch was my main factor, but I also felt just a little bit down on power, and I was like, I tried to ignore that, chalk it up to just the clutch is being weird. It's engaging way too sharp, so it's not allowing me to slip the clutch at all and spike it into the RPM and keep it there, especially with these new tires that I put on with their really aggressive tread block. I mean, those are way sharper than what I well, normally would run because I ain't got money to change them all the time. And so I was like, it's just, the bike's gripping really good right now, and the clutch is engaging way too sharp, and it's not allowing it to slip when I want it to slip. So I chalked that up, got to that, and then I got up there to the gate, and they put my class with a class of girls. I know, y'all are gonna laugh at me. No, I'm kidding. I didn't even get to start, so haha. Little spoiler there. I got to the gate. The girls launched first because they let the girls go first, and then they put us on the line, and they were going to launch us as the girls were racing, so they were, already in their lap. They were going to drop the gate and let us go right behind them. I get up there, and then I got the bike revved out a little bit with the other guys, and, and then they dropped the gate, and here, and that was it. As soon as the gate dropped, my bike blew up. Not even joking. And there's where the real fun starts. So I got it back home after thinking it was just a loose spark plug at the top that came out, because my spark plug somehow did end up loose. I don't know how that happened. I think it was something we did the night before, but the spark plug ended up loose. I know I'm pointing to just air and dirt right now, but that's where it would be sitting. It came loose, so I tightened it down. They were going to let me race a different heat, and we could not get the bike to start for the life of us. All we kept getting was every once in a while a good hoof, poof, and it would just backfire. Not like a two-stroke's supposed to do. And so after probably 45 minutes or so of kicking the bike and dragging it and all that to try and get it to start, we finally realized it just was not going to happen. So I got it home, and I was too dang tired and not motivated that day to tear it apart. So the next day, I tore it apart, and boy, was there a lot. All right, we're going to start from the top here. I got home, I'm tearing it apart, and I realized I think one of the radiator clamps somehow got loose. Probably was on me. I probably didn't tighten it, but one of the radiator clamps up here was loose. I'm sure that was dripping some coolant. Not a good thing at all. I take those off. I move past that. I'm thinking, well, dang it, I lost my coolant up there. That probably seized the bike. Oh boy, was I only just hitting the iceberg on that. Somehow, the piston ring, I don't know if you guys can see it, but, over here it sticks out and it squishes and moves. Well, on this side, one, it does not stick out, and two, you cannot get the piston ring to move. It is locked in there. Another thing is with the piston, you can clearly see where it's been making contact with the top of the engine. That's a big old no-no. You do not ever want that touching the top of the engine. In the very center, I don't know if you guys can see it, but there is a slight scratch. Yeah, you guys can't see that very well. But right there's a slight scratch, and that's from where it was also making contact with my spark plug. It came up and it smacked the end gap on my spark plug too close, and it wasn't sparking correctly. And so I couldn't, get enough spark to actually start the engine. I'm going to pull this out of here. There's a lot here going on. I don't know if any of y'all just saw that, but there's also some serious up and down play in that shaft. That is also a gigantuan no-no. There's also plastic shavings everywhere from, give me a sec, from the side of the actual crank itself. So the shaft was also sliding over and hitting the plastic in here, parts of the counterweights and all that, and was destroying itself there. The cylinder itself was all scratched up on the inside. Well, by all scratched up, I mean it's like ghost marking scratches, but still there, and it's glazed over. The power valves themselves were not actually screwed in anymore, and I did not mess with those. So don't anyone flame me in the comments for, man, you really don't know how to tighten things up. Because, one, yes, you're right, I don't. Two, I didn't mess with those. Granted, I haven't messed with them in probably, I don't know, over 100 hours of riding the bike. It's been 4 years that I've owned this bike. And the only time I ever messed with those power valves is once when I installed them and then disconnecting the governor arm over here on the side of the power valves, which that was not my problem. That was actually still tight, and that always stays tight. I don't know why. It was actually the arm on the inside. If anyone knows a 919 YZ125 or that era, on the inside, shoot, I can just put in a clip of me messing with that and actually show you guys what it looks like. So here's the cylinder from my bike. This is where that governor arm attaches. Like I said, I'd never have any problems with this coming loose. Don't know how. I never put Loctite on here. Don't know how. I never have problems with it. Here's where I was having problems. So as you guys can probably see up in there, right there, those two holes, that's where some screws are supposed to go that are supposed to help hold power valves and stuff. And anyone that is looking with their eyeballs at all can see that this spring is not the same as this spring. By not the same, I mean it is underneath the power valve, which means that it pushes it open, and then the power valve gets locked open and does not get returned by that spring like this one does because it's not on the top. Now, I have come to the conclusion that that spring actually is still okay. I don't know how it ended up on that side and didn't get back over, but it did. So I also had that problem, which probably didn't help that, I had no real power valve, so I was probably a little low on low-end power. Yeah, so I had these two screws bouncing around in the bottom of the case, just doing nothing, which probably knocked that spring off when it went back one time, and then just pushed the spring off to the side. And so, yeah, that happened. Down in there, hold on, try and get the flash on for you guys. Nope, okay, not allowed while using this camera type. Okay, gotcha. Well, I don't know if you guys can see down in there very well, but yeah, you can probably see that ghost marking right in here on that one, like in between that bridge right there. That mark shouldn't be there. Honestly, it might be easier to go through the top here. Yeah, those marks should not all be there at all. Like, no mark should be in there. And there is a lot of, oh my gosh, actually, I didn't know that backside was that bad. But yeah, it is pretty marked up on the inside. That didn't help. I've got not the same case, but essentially the exact same thing happened, because don't mind the messed up part. I've been trying to weld it, extract it out of here. The same thing happened, but this one happened a long time ago. The stud just snapped off the case, but the one that happened at the race weekend happened lower than just the top. It actually broke down inside of the hole, so that doesn't help. This one I did when I first got the bike. My dad was like, just go out there and torque those jug nuts down, and you'll know the torque wrench will just break free. And so I went out there as a complete and total novice with a torque wrench that I was told breaks free. So I'm pulling on the wrench, and it never broke free. So I just kept pulling until, snap, clean off. It just broke it clean off. Turns out torque wrenches don't break free. They just tink tink. Who else would have known that at the ripe old age of 14 and never using a torque wrench before? Yeah, not me. I was just told go till it breaks free, so I was expecting it to finally, when I reach the correct torque, it just starts spinning, and then I gotta reset it somehow. not what happened. So, yeah, I broke it off a long time ago. But essentially, same thing happened, just it never actually reached the torque value because I guess it rusted halfway through and it just pulled it and broke it off. Actually, somewhere I have that broken stud. Give me a sec. So this right here is actually the stud. As you guys can see there, it is shiny in one little spot, and then the rest is dull, and that's where it rusted it through. So that one tiny little spot right there is all that was holding that down. And then when I put torque on it, it just went ka-tink and broke right off. But that right there is a quick and dirty rundown of essentially how my race weekend went. No better than the last time. Actually, somehow kind of worse, because I at least got to finish the race last time. Even though the engine was drinking coolant, because my button seals went out on the engine, because the Athena kit uses the seals, and then also inside the button has, let me dump those out. Up inside here it is a two-piece one. So inside the Athena kit, if I can get it to come out, is another seal that holds the coolant. Well, I forgot about that one, and so it went bad and leaked coolant into the cylinder that way. And one of these ones went bad, so it leaked coolant in there. And that's the first time I went to Wildcat Creek MX 2 years ago. And so it was running on coolant, half power-ish. I was casing every single jump because I couldn't get enough speed to jump them. So, yeah. And then this time I was smart enough, I was like, hey, I ain't letting that happen a second time. And so I fixed that problem. And then other things just went south. You can see where the piston was making contact with this, and well, the piston was making contact with the cylinder, and the power valves weren't working, and all sorts of things went wrong. But we're going to get that fixed. Hopefully get me out to another race within a couple months or so. Even if I just go by myself. That is a lot of money for everyone to go, and time off and all that for them. So I understand, maybe them not being able to go with. But even if I got to go myself, it's just another attempt to get better and hopefully be able to do something. And hopefully I will actually have practice on a real track instead of just essentially a flat track around my house that I've carved in by just putting lap after lap in it. So hopefully I'll be able to hit some real jumps and be kind of comfortable and be able to send some real jumps at a real track. And hopefully next race I will be a little bit better with a pretty solid bike, and hopefully things will go more my way. But we'll see. So, see you guys. I might do a video on rebuilding the engine. I might also just go, it's been a couple weeks and I just want to ride, so put it together and all that, and then give you guys a quick rundown afterwards. But I probably will take some videos of it as I go along. So I'll see you guys, I guess, maybe when I rebuild the engine. Otherwise, I'll probably see you guys after I rebuild the engine, put it in the bike, give you guys a quick rundown. So, peace.